The shortest war in history lasted only 38 to 45 minutes. On August 27, 1896, the British Empire fought the tiny island nation Zanzibar off the east coast of Africa. The entire war lasted somewhere between 38 and 45 minutes, making it the shortest war ever recorded. The British had significant influence over Zanzibar and wanted a leader who would cooperate with them. When the pro-British sultan died unexpectedly, his cousin Khalid bin Barghash seized the throne without British approval. The British gave him an ultimatum: step down by 9 a.m. on August 27th or face military action. Khalid refused. Instead, he barricaded himself inside the palace with around 2,800 soldiers, a few cannons, and one old royal yacht armed with a small gun. Waiting offshore were 5 Royal Navy warships packed with modern naval artillery, along with hundreds of British Marines and local troops. At exactly 9:02 a.m., the British opened fire. The palace, mostly built of wood, was quickly set ablaze. Cannons were destroyed. The royal yacht was sunk in the harbor. Within minutes, the palace was in ruins. By 9:40 a.m., the palace raised a white flag, ending the war in roughly 38 to 45 minutes. The oldest your mom joke is nearly 3,500 years old. The oldest known example was found on a Babylonian clay tablet dating around 1500 BC, making it roughly 3,500 years old. The tablet was written in Akkadian, one of the oldest written languages, using wedge-shaped symbols called cuneiform. It contains several jokes and riddles that people were apparently telling thousands of years ago. The tablet is damaged, so the ending is missing. Scholars can only translate part of it, which roughly begins, quote, "Of your mother is by the one who has intercourse with her." The ancient Romans used urine as mouthwash. The ancient Romans believed that urine was excellent for cleaning teeth. Why? Because when urine sits for a while, it breaks down and releases ammonia, the same chemical that's still found in many household cleaning products today. Ammonia can help remove stains and grease, so Romans thought it would also whiten teeth. Fresh urine wasn't even considered the best option. Many Romans preferred aged urine because it contained more ammonia. It became valuable enough that merchants actually collected and sold it. The emperor at the time even imposed a tax on the collection and sale of urine. A man was elected president after he died. This happened during the 1872 U.S. presidential election and is one of the strangest moments in American political history. The Democratic Party nominated newspaper editor Horace Greeley to run against the incumbent president Ulysses S. Grant. Grant won the popular vote by a comfortable margin, but the election wasn't officially over yet. The president isn't formally chosen until the Electoral College meets several weeks later to cast its vote. Just weeks after the election, Greeley's wife died. Already exhausted from the campaign, Greeley suffered a mental and physical collapse and died on November 29, 1872, before the Electoral College had met. When the Electoral College finally met, they couldn't legally cast electoral votes for a deceased candidate, so most of Greeley's electors split their votes among several other Democrats instead. 3 electors still attempted to vote for Greeley, but Congress later refused to count those votes. Australia lost a war to emus in 1932, and yes, it was officially called the Emu War. After World War I, many Australian veterans were given farmland in Western Australia, but there was one unexpected problem. Every year, around 20,000 emus, large flightless birds that can grow over 6 feet tall and run up to 30 miles per hour, would migrate through the farms. They trampled fences, destroyed crops, and ate huge amounts of grain. Farmers were desperate for help, so they asked the government. And instead of sending more workers, the Australian military showed up with soldiers and 2 Lewis machine guns. The plan sounded simple: find the emus, shoot the emus. It did not go that way. The birds traveled in small groups, making them difficult targets. As soon as the soldiers opened fire, the emus scattered in every direction. At one point, the soldiers even mounted a machine gun to the back of a truck to chase them. The truck bounced so much over rough terrain they couldn't even aim. The emus simply just outran them. After thousands of rounds of ammunition, the military had killed only a fraction of the birds. The operation became expensive, embarrassing, and the press started making jokes that the emus were winning the war. Eventually, the government gave up and withdrew the soldiers. Technically, the emus didn't defeat the Australian military in battle, but they survived the campaign, so effectively that operation failed. A pope once put another pope's corpse on trial. This happened in 897 AD during one of the most bizarre events in church history, known as the Cadaver Synod. A few months after Pope Formosus died, the new pope, Pope Stephen VI, wanted to erase his predecessor's legacy, but instead of simply criticizing, he ordered Formosus' body to be dug up from its grave. The corpse, dead for about 9 months, was dressed back up in full papal robes and placed on a throne inside a church as if he were attending his own trial. Since the dead body obviously couldn't defend itself, another priest was assigned to answer questions on the corpse's behalf. Stephen accused the dead pope of illegally becoming pope and abusing his office. Not surprisingly, the trial didn't go well for the defendant. Formosus was declared guilty. His papal acts were declared invalid. The 3 fingers he used to give blessings were cut off, and his body was stripped of its robes. As a final insult, the corpse was thrown into the Tiber River, and the public was horrified. Many Romans believed Stephen had gone too far. Within months, a revolt broke out. Stephen was arrested, thrown into prison, and later strangled to death. Cleopatra lived closer to the moon landing than to the building of the Great Pyramid. When most people think of ancient Egypt, they imagine Cleopatra standing in front of the Great Pyramids. She was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than the construction of the Great Pyramids. Here's the timeline. The pyramids of Giza were completed around 2560 BC. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC, a gap of nearly 2,500 years. For comparison, Cleopatra died in 30 BC, and humans landed on the moon in 1969 AD. Less than 2,000 years later. So Cleopatra was actually closer in time to astronauts walking on the moon than she was to the workers building the Great Pyramids. Cleopatra probably didn't see the pyramids as new or even particularly special. To her, they were already ancient monuments that had stood over 2 millennia. Vikings never wore horned helmets. If someone asked you to picture a Viking, you probably imagine a huge warrior with a beard and a helmet with giant horns sticking out of the sides. The real Vikings almost certainly never wore horned helmets in battle. Horns would have been incredibly impractical. They'd make the helmets heavier, easier for an enemy to grab, and more likely to get caught on shields or weapons. Archaeologists have uncovered few Viking helmets. The ones they have found are simple iron helmets designed for protection, not fashion. In the late 1800s, costume designer Carl Emil Doliper created elaborate horned helmets for a production of composer Richard Wagner's opera cycle, The Ring des Jabbar. Yeah. The costumes looked dramatic, audiences loved them, and the image spread through paintings, advertisements, cartoons, and eventually movies and TV shows. Over time, people assumed the costumes were historically accurate, and they weren't. Ketchup was once sold as medicine. In the 1830s, some people believed it belonged in your medicine cabinet. An American physician named John Cook Bennett claimed that tomato ketchup could cure a variety of illnesses, including indigestion, diarrhea, and even cholera. At the time, tomatoes had only become recently widely accepted as a food in the United States. Some people had even believed that they were poisonous just a few decades earlier. Bennett argued that tomatoes had powerful medicinal properties, and his claims spread quickly. Companies began selling tomato pills and tomato extract, advertising them as miracle cures for almost everything. Most of those pills weren't even made from tomatoes. Many manufacturers jumped on the trend by selling fake medicines filled with cheap ingredients while claiming they had the same health benefits. As scientists learned more about nutrition and medicine, it became clear that ketchup wasn't a miracle drug after all. The fad faded away, and tomato pills disappeared from pharmacies. A daredevil survived going over Niagara Falls. In 1911, Leach climbed into a specifically designed steel barrel and deliberately went over Niagara Falls. The plunge was about 167 feet, and the impact at the bottom is violent enough to kill almost anyone. Leach survived. He suffered a broken jaw, fractured kneecaps, and several other injuries, but after months of recovery, he walked away and became famous for accomplishing one of the world's most dangerous stunts. Years later, walking down the street in New Zealand, Leach slipped on an orange peel. The fall injured his leg, and the wound became infected. In an era before antibiotics were widely available, the infection turned into gangrene. Doctors had to amputate the leg, but the infection still spread. In 1926, Bobby Leach died from complications that began with slipping on an orange peel.